Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, it is definitely an interesting one. I usually don't make videos that are titled like this or formatted like this, but I've been kind of wanting to make a video like this as we are pretty much on the cusp of really starting to see more wintry weather occur. We just had our first really major winter storm that pulled out across Montana and Wyoming and dropped a lot of snow. And as you could tell by the title, yes, we will be talking about kind of the long range. There's nothing in specific I will be talking about. No individual storm system, no individual cold outbreak in this video. Kind of just a trend, a pattern that could form, and whether or not it does, what could it mean kind of for winter? What can it foreshadow? And kind of what I've noticed off of years of my kind of observation at this time of the year. So yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So before we get into this, if you guys at one point, or another, find this video interesting, or you find this channel something that you would like, consider subscribing. Obviously, don't do it just because I told you so. I'm just reminding you. I'm not begging for these subscriptions, right? So if you do find it enjoyable, consider subscribing and hitting the like button. And if you have any comments or concerns, consider leaving them down below. Otherwise, let's start talking about this. So, really, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything right now. The pattern right now looks very boring after this winter storm. There isn't really going to be much. I'm sure if you have been watching the weather models, and I know many of you do, you don't just watch my videos, right? You're a weather enthusiast yourself. I mean, I'll show you the GFS, and there really won't be many things that are super interesting. So yes, we will have some rain systems, right? There's a rainstorm right there with a cold front across the northeast, and it pulls off. I mean, that isn't really too exciting, right? I mean, at least something is occurring, but that's nothing that we could be seeing comparatively to this time of the year, or what we have in years prior, where already, there was a string of winter storms at this time, or what the models were showing in the next 10 to 15 days at this time, say last year. But yeah, so we have that storm. I mean, look how far the rain goes. There's really no sign of any snow, maybe some lake effect off the lakes. The west, little disturbances, and by the way, this system that forms right here is going to be the biggest one probably in a while, in terms of rain or snow. And notice that we do have little disturbance crashes through the Pacific, Wyoming. I mean, really nothing. And this is already Tuesday of next week. This is Wednesday. Thursday, we see some sort of a low pressure developing. I mean, you can't even call that a storm system. It's just honestly more of a disturbance. It does interact with some sort of cold air, which could be a bit chilly, a bit below, kind of chillier than usual for this time of the year, which, again, we've been seeing just warm conditions. So anything even normal kind of feels chilly. And for warmth, I speak for, probably a good, really 75% of the country. There may be a few areas that have seen normal or chillier temperatures, but it's been rather warm, and yeah, it's definitely been warm, especially the nights. And if you're to take a look across the west, we do have some activity brewing. The northeast, we see some sort of a storm trying to take shape again. No snow, just maybe some rain showers. And at this point, we're already almost 240 hours out, which is bordering pretty much a long range. So in the medium to short range pattern, yes, there will be some disturbances. Again, nothing that that is exciting, especially for this time of the year when usually kind of exciting things start happening. So I would say rather predominantly warm. There are some indications you can see right there at around the 240-hour timeline. And again, this isn't just one model showing this. This is many. Some sort of a cold disturbance, cold front. And some show that cold air getting way far down into the southern United States. They don't really show a snowstorm with it, but a cool off at least. But look, there's a little bit of a spinning system, but again, producing snow at areas that typically have already should be seeing that snow, so nothing really too exciting or unusual. And now notice that across the west, what we do see is a lot of precipitation coming in from the Pacific Ocean, or at least trying to, and it eventually does. And you can see that does potentially spin up some systems across the United States, maybe some snow right there. You can see indications of that. But again, at this point, I can't talk about a system like this because it's just too darn far out, and the models have no consistency with this. And I think the last one that occurred across Montana and Wyoming, I started talking about at around this time frame. But I'm not going to talk about this one because, well, there's some large differences between those two systems. This one, the GFS just showed. This is the model one prior at the same exact time. Look at it. I mean, that's a complete change. Again, no snowstorm, no rainstorm, no real cool off. Again, and at this point, we're already at October 30th, almost November 1st, which is meteorologically November is the last full month of autumn So again, it's a bit interesting to see this year's pattern, how it's been extremely warm, and you can see even in the long range, there will be some areas that are cooler, potentially maybe across the east and Great Lakes. But look, I mean, it's mainly warm, and the warm air anomalies kind of outdo the cool air anomalies in terms of magnitude. And yeah, really, the GFS I would say is more on a cool scenario with this, because it even shows some cool air. If you're to take a look at the ensembles, really not a lot of them are supportive of a cold scenario. And you can see this is kind of many models combined, which is what we call the GFS family. We do see a bit of cold air now and into this weekend, but afterwards, mainly warmth, some periods of cool air. You can see right there around that 240-hour timeline, plus or minus a few hours this or that way. There is some cool air. The European ensembles also show that, but generally warm air mass, and you can see that kind of spreads into the future as well. So why did I title the video like this? So you clearly see that there isn't really anything of extraordinary interest going on in a long range, or even a medium or short range, I should say, especially the medium to short range. No big storms, no big cool offs of cool temperatures, nothing winter like. And this is where things start getting interesting, because the next pattern change that we do see, a significant one, right? Because if we continue seeing warm temperatures, that's not really a pattern change. That's more of what's been already occurring, right? And if we continue seeing that, or we, the pattern kind of continues going drier and warmer, kind of a continuation of what's here. And if these weather models were to be accurate with this forecast, which again I think they aren't, because there's so much disagreement amongst the models, that I think that this could mean that at least the beginning half of, say, this winter, in November and into December, could be on the warmer side, and this La Nina is going to be struggling to establish its foothold across the United States, and it's going to be more of a warm pattern regime. Now, if we do see something that the models agree on, something comes to fruition, for example, what I mean by that is, well, let's take a look at the 12Z model run, of the GFS in particular by itself. And I want to show you this one because the newest one doesn't show it, but look at what this one showed. So we had that little system, right? Pretty boring pattern, but around the 240-hour timeline, it develops this system. And look, it drags in a lot of cold air right there. Now, yes, that's not too significant. I mean, it honestly is. It develops lake effect snows, but it doesn't stay along for long, or doesn't stay doesn't stay around for long. And if you're to take a look at the anomalies, they are pretty significant, but again, as I mentioned, they do move out pretty quickly. And you can see that's, come on, where is this, right there, that moves out. It does develop a snowstorm across eastern Canada, but nothing across really the forecast region. And really what that would do is not necessarily change a pattern, but it shows that the pattern is capable of producing those little blast of air. And notice that with the same model on, look how active the west gets. Once a trough moves in, that ridge moves in after that. It supplies a ton of moisture to the western United States. And look, we have a big storm across the eastern United States. Obviously, mainly rain, not enough rain or cold air for that. And notice a lot of snow for the west, and it's probably only a matter of time before one of these systems taps into that cold air from the south and develops into a snowstorm. So you can see it's a much more active scenario, right? But compared to the newest model of the GFS, which just came in really a few hours ago, and look, we have that same storm. We do have that pattern potential around 240. The cold air does not make it nearly as far down to the south, if really at all, to the United States. And we do see that little winter storm potential. Again, I don't even want to call that a winter storm. There's just not enough snow to call that winter storm. And we do see some sort of a ridging across the west. So you see the thing that there is no defined pattern right now. The models are all in disagreement. If I were to show you the European model in terms of its anomaly, temperature anomaly, up until 240 hours, which is the farthest the European goes out, not the 384 like the GFS goes out. Look, we do see a little bit of that cold air this weekend across the west, spilling into the east. After that, periods of warmth and cool air, but mainly warm. And you can see the cool areas where they are cool are much more not really as cool as the warm is warm, if you will, and it's covering a lot smaller areas. And look at the heat that builds potentially. Again, more of a resemblance of what we've been kind of already experiencing. Now, the Canadian, on the other hand, kind of similarly shows what the European is showing. Mainly warm pattern. We do have that initial blast of cool air into this weekend. Anything after that is nothing of really importance in terms of the cold air, or not importance, but nothing interesting, nothing winter-like. It's mainly just warm. And I think that the European model itself, the model on prior, yeah, you can see right there what it showed. I mean, 12-hour difference, and look what it showed, right? This was yesterday midnight, a nice decent trough of cool air indicating a completely different pattern, but then compared to the one today at noon. I mean, there's no sign of cool air anywhere. Maybe a bit across the east. It's a completely different location, and it's completely different in terms of magnitude. So you could see that the European jumps around, the GFS is definitely jumping around, and the Canadian is also jumping around. This is what it showed right now. This is what it showed at midnight, which again showed, you can see similar to the European, showed a little trough digging in at, and the most updated one shows no sign of that whatsoever. So whatever the models do end up agreeing on, which again is very, very little. They agree pretty much on nothing, and again, they don't even have their own mind made up on anything. It's like they don't have their own opinions, and their opinions amongst the other members are the same. Like, they're all stuck in the same situation. They don't know what to say, they don't know what to show, and that's why the pattern is kind of a question mark. That's why I really didn't make a video yesterday. I wasn't about to make a video today because, I mean, there's literally nothing to talk about that interests me, and it kind of makes me, let's make a video about it. I mean, and then today I just thought of this video because whatever the models do decide on, whether it's a warm pattern, that could honestly probably foreshadow what could come into November. It's probably going to stick as a more of a warmer pattern. If the models do break out into more of a colder pattern, I think that could set the stage for the first half of this winter, and that cold may kind of linger into much of November and potentially into December, which is why I titled the video the way it is. Why this upcoming pattern change, which doesn't have it's not, there is going to be a pattern change, most likely, or a pattern continuation, 100%, but what's that going to be, I don't know, but whatever it is, it's going to be a pretty big indication of what's to come, because we've been stuck in this pattern for a while, right? And oftentimes, if you're stuck in a very large, long period of warm temperatures, you're going to eventually see a period where it turns towards a cooler side. And if we don't see that now, it's going to be tough kind of to see it, a week once this warm pattern kind of starts continuing again, if that makes sense. If it's going to continue, it's going to continue for a while, not just for a few days. And the same thing with the cool air. Once it breaks into that cool air, it's most likely going to be not cold all the time, but it's going to be a pattern that favors troughing, bigger storms, wherever that troughing is, honestly, wherever it is, the west, the east, the central. And again, at this point, it's interesting to see what the models will do. If they do show more warm conditions, as we kind of, and what I mean by when, I don't know when they will, but if they continue jumping around like this, we can't make up they can't make up their minds in anything, then we won't know. But I think by the end of this weekend, we should be able to see what's in a long range. And again, if it is a more of a cooler pattern, that is potentially an indication of what's to spill into November and December. And if it's warmer, it may be a bit warmer for a bit longer. Obviously, yes, I do still think that what I said about the winter this year, I think it will be cooler and snowier for especially the Northwest, the Midwest, and maybe the Northeast, but warmer towards the South. Those kind of were my predictions. But if that doesn't happen, the pattern change, the cool pattern change into really the second half of October or early half of November, then we could be looking at a very interesting first half of winter, if you really even want to call it winter, right? That's a thing. It might be very warm. So we'll have to see. Regarding the kind of the La Nina ocean analysis, it's definitely showing signs of strengthening. So again, it's not like if there's just a random El Nino that's going to pop up or a neutral. It's going to be a La Nina most likely. And the Climate Prediction Center agrees with that. So that doesn't really help, though. Every La Nina is different. La Ninas have been different. They will be different, and they always are a year of extremes. For my city, it was a cool graphic. Last year I was watching the winter forecast for 2020, 2021, and they said that La Ninas usually are a year of extremes, and that this was specific to Chicago, but I'm sure it's shareable across many cities. And they gave every single year there was a La Nina for the past 20 years. They gave an example of how was it extreme. And the thing is that for 2015, when it was a La Nina here, 2014, 2015, there was a large, a massive snowstorm. One that occurs maybe once every 20 years. And that was rather extreme. the 2016-2017 La Nina here ended up producing tornadoes in February. You can see it's not a snowy extreme, it's a warm extreme, and that's the thing. It's an extreme, but it doesn't have to be a snowy extreme, and I think that's why the year of extremes for this winter is going to be applicable, whether in a cold sense or warm sense. It's tough to tell, but again, based on what this upcoming major next pattern change or continuation does, I think that could set the stage for what's to come. So, yeah, I mean, I may be wrong, but usually in years prior that I think are very comparable to this year, 2017 for example, it was a very warm October, but by November and especially December it was getting cold, and the pattern change was very clear. At this point it's not, doesn't mean that it won't, but it's something that kind of is putting us in limbo, which is why the pattern has so few things to talk about, because the confidence is so low, and also why I'm making this video, because it's probably going to be decided, within the next couple of days or within the next few weeks what's to come, and we'll just have to observe and watch. But as of now, really nothing much to talk about. I could show you the Climate Prediction Center and what they think will happen in the next few days. So here I have pulled up the 8 to 14 day outlook, which again you could see is indicating warmer temperatures for much of the United States in the next 8 to 14 days through the 22nd through the 28th of October. And again, this was issued today, and you can see they're indicating drier conditions for the east, wetter for the west. So again, I guess a pattern change in a sense that it's wetter for the west, but in terms of temperatures, it's a pattern continuation. 6 to 10 day, most of the same thing, maybe in near normal conditions. But again, if they were to be normal, I would say they're probably a bit above rather than a bit below. And you could see that in terms of precip, it's mainly dry, except, again, the west being a bit more active. So, again, more of a pattern continuation rather than a pattern, really a pattern change. So, we'll have to see. These forecasts aren't always right. Take that as a good or a bad thing, but they usually, have some sort of truth, but not always. And I guess that's what makes weather interesting. But, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. At this point, again, the pattern doesn't look to be changing. So if that does, continue to be warm, that could be an indication of what's to come, a warm early half of winter, which is very possible. But again, if it does start showing signs of changing, especially if it doesn't, by late October especially, then, we could be in for that warm winter. And if it does, or early half of winter, and if it does, then I think again we could be quickly diving into a colder pattern. It won't be a slow transition. Again, that's not usually what happens with the La Nina. I can show you the climate model. It's a model that goes out to 768 hours, but again, it's so inaccurate that really it just probably ought to confuse us more than clear anything up or give any satisfaction or guarantee. And notice what it shows in terms of its pattern. Let me just run through this again. This is very inaccurate usually, but you can see it shows precip warmth. As you can see, that it's raining still way across the inland portions of Northeast at late October. Again, the snow is way further to the north, so yeah, I wouldn't say it suggests a wintry pattern, but then again, it's inaccurate, so take that as a good or a bad thing. This was a model run from midnight, and there were some differences. You can see it was a bit more cold, kind of showing some colder air, but yeah, and again, you could see it just jumps around. One scenario is cold, one scenario is warm. This model too is all over the place, just like the short range or medium range models. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you understood something out of that. It was just more of an unorganized video, but catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.